All right, this is going to be the last regular Blue Jackets update until the next regular season for them kicks off because they slid headfirst into the offseason. And for this year, obviously, I will be starting this video with a brief recap of the last three games that have happened since last Monday. At Tuesday in Philadelphia, they lost 4-3 in overtime against the Flyers. Then on Thursday, back home against Pittsburgh, getting the win in overtime 3-2 over the Penguins. And on Friday, their final game in Nationwide Arena against Buffalo, losing 5-2 against the Sabres. Now, it takes just one look at the standings and the record for the Blue Jackets to know that this was essentially Murphy's hockey season for Columbus this year. They finished 25, 48, and 9 for a total of 59 points, which was good for last in the Metro and in the Eastern Conference in general, but they even managed to lose at losing, and they placed 31st in the NHL, just ahead of the Anaheim Ducks. Now, I did get into more of the specifics about the woes of the season when I did my video on Brad Larson and Manny Legase getting let go fired, not having the contract renewed, whatever, just not with the organization anymore. So this video is going to be more of a general review of the Blue Jackets, how it's gone this year, position by position. Starting with the forwards, I'm going to be doing my pick for their group's MVP, their biggest surprise, and also the biggest disappointment for each group. With my forward MVP and probably the MVP for the team in general, it's Johnny Gaudreau. The big offseason acquisition, I thought, in my opinion, did his part on this team that everything around him just kind of fell apart. He had 74 points, including more than 50 assists with this horrible team. To me, going into next season, his contract will still be a bargain for the time being. Maybe on the tail end of that contract, it might be a bit of a burden, but I think for now, for what you got from Johnny Gaudreau this year and what he continues to bring, expected to bring to this team next year, I think it will still be a bargain. Again, I feel like he brought the energy to this team. We can talk about his, he's not exactly like the most vocal leader on the team or anything, but you have a team captain for that in Boone Jenner. But as far as on the ice production, I think he did just about as well as you could expect him to with the team that he was handling with. My best surprise for me was actually Matthew Olivier on the fourth line, brought in to be a physical presence in the bottom six to kind of rough things up. Honestly, he brought plenty of physicality, as much as you would expect, and he brought some offense too. There were a couple times where he had a couple goals that were definitely just some really good snipes that goalies just couldn't get to, and every time he did it, you just kind of turned your head and be like, that was Matthew Olivier, really, he did that. And I do feel like he kind of brought that presence of he was willing to lay the body on anyone. He was willing to fight with anybody on the ice. And that was just a nice thing to see on this team that definitely needed some more physical presence on this team. Now, Olivier currently is a restricted free agent. I would be a little bit surprised if he wasn't in a Blue Jackets uniform next season, because I do think the front office has seen what Olivier has done for the physicality of this team and just in general being a positive impact on the ice, and I would be surprised if they let him walk with contract control. And my biggest disappointment for the forward group, I would say, would be Jack Roslovic. You look at his point totals and you think, well, he's averaging more than half a point per game. How could it be that big of a disappointment? And to me, it's just more of when and where he got those points, where at the beginning of the year it was definitely a struggle, and he didn't really catch on until the season was already lost anyway, and it was just kind of, we saw the worst version of Jack Roslovic early on in the season, which was really the only time when the games truly mattered as far as the Blue Jackets having aspirations of making it, of having a season that went beyond the regular season for this one. And the center position in general, there were opportunities to find some answers as to where the season how the center position will look in the future. We didn't really get much. I mean, Boone Jenner was the top line center by default, and no one really stepped up to take it from him, including Jack Roslovic, who, again, he was kind of rough to start the year. We saw very inconsistent flashes of brilliance from Jack Roslovic. I think he had a 4-point game against the Kings, but overall, we just saw a lot of what we saw last year, where we started slow, but then he'll have some really good games where you think like, oh, what can we get this Jack Roslovic all the time? And as we progress further into his career, the answer seems to be more often than not, no, not really. Although he has looked at his best when he's on the same line as Patrick Laine. Usually Patrick Laine is on the top line, and Jack Roslovic hasn't gotten that much top line time with him. But when he has played with Patrick Laine, he does seem to look a little bit better. Cole Sillinger play, speaking of a center who could have stepped up a little bit more this year that we wanted to. His play was on a downturn. I don't think he necessarily looked all that bad. He didn't look completely lost out there, but his offensive production as far as getting on the score sheet was definitely further down than we would have expected it to be at this point in his development. And he was eventually sent to Cleveland, although I would argue that he was sent to Cleveland probably way too late into this slump where it's just after like 40 some games of not scoring a goal or whatever. He probably should have been sent down to Cleveland. However much sooner you could have. Every other center we kind of know was stuck in the bottom six, including NCAA free agent signing Hunter McCown, who was getting some looks around the league. He was pretty much kept to pretty limited ice time throughout his time this season in Columbus. We'll see how his development progresses with the organization later. Someone who didn't really get much time playing at center, but who might have been, was Kent Johnson. He had a pretty good rookie season with 40 points, but I don't really know what the organization views him as positionally, because they have said before that they thought that they drafted a center. Kent Johnson himself has expressed desire to play the center position, but Brad Larson in the lineup usually kept him pretty much exclusively on the wing and only playing him in center in emergency situations with injury and stuff like that. So maybe the new coach, whoever that ends up being, maybe him and the organization decides to really just play Kent Johnson more at center and develop him more at that position. But as for this season, they pretty much kept him exclusively on the wing. Now, you can't mention rookies on the forwards for the Blue Jackets without talking about Kirill Marchenko this year. I think he was a true bright spot on this Blue Jackets team. He did break the Blue Jackets franchise record for goals in a rookie season with 21. He got Pierre-Luc Dubois' name off of the record books, which I am all for. I don't care that Winnipeg made the playoffs. I don't want Pierre-Luc Dubois' name on any Blue Jackets related thing anytime soon. I hate that, but good for Kirill Marchenko for getting that guy off of the record book. Someone that I can actually enjoy watching play hockey now has their record in the Blue Jackets system there. The goals without an assist numbers that he had coming into the league rivaled numbers that the NHL hadn't seen since the 1920s. I think he had like 12 or 13 goals before he got his first NHL assist, which again hadn't happened since the early 1900s, which is insane to think about. But both him and Kent Johnson look like they will be definitely contributors in the future, both in the short-term and long-term future for this organization if they do keep those guys around. That's something that I'd like to look forward to. There were other forwards that had some notoriety, of course, but I'm not going to go over every single roster player in this video. So we're going to be moving on to the defense. As far as the MVP on defense, I honestly don't know how to name one, considering that the Blue Jackets were down to just one of their starting lineup NHL defensemen at the end of the year. The rest were just rookies. I mean, I guess I could say, if I had to pick one, I guess Gavrikov, but he got traded, so I'm not sure what that says about the future of the Blue Jackets D-core. Andrew Peeke did block a lot of shots. I think he was third in the NHL and definitely highest on the Blue Jackets, but I think as far as Andrew Peeke's actual performance goes, I don't know if I'd call him an MVP for the team on this one. So I guess if I had to say one, I guess it would be Gavrikov in this one. Biggest surprise for me on defense, as far as pleasant surprise, was Tim Burney. He got called up due to the injuries, and he did manage to stick around throughout the entire year. I thought he didn't look too out of place on the NHL roster. He was solid. I mean, he didn't do anything mind-blowing, but as far as being surprisingly competent as an NHL defenseman, I do think Tim Burney gets my nod there. And it just feels kind of mean naming a biggest disappointment for this one, because most of the defensive players I thought that were bad were not supposed to be in this position in the first place. And I do know that it's fun to hate on Eric Goodbranson for his contract, but I actually didn't hate Eric Goodbranson's season here. I thought he actually did provide a lot of solid minutes during those injury-mired stretches of the year where he did have a rough start, but I feel like in the middle of the season when everybody got hurt and he was playing on like the top line or whatever, I do feel like Eric Goodbranson did give some solid games in there. I guess maybe Gavin Bayreuther, but again, that just feels mean because Gavin Bayreuther was not supposed to be in the spot that he was in. The Zach Werenski injury really pretty much set this group back as far as what they could have done. Now, the unit as a whole did give up 330 goals, which is a new franchise record, breaking a franchise record dating all the way back to last season when they broke another franchise record. So not a great track record for Steve McCarthy, who's been the assistant coach responsible for the defense in the past 2 seasons. I would not be surprised at all if whoever the Jackets bring in as a new head coach managed to get someone else behind the bench running the defense. Or maybe the head coach will be the guy running the defense. Who knows? The defense didn't really seem to have that much of a structure behind them. A lot of sloppy play in their own zone. A lot of sometimes it just looked like chickens with their head cut off when they're trying to clear it. Despite a new system being advertised in the offseason, we heard quotes from Lars that, yeah, we have a new defensive system going. Whether, that system was either not good or it was too complicated for the players to understand, even if it was good. So overall, the defense was just another horrible year. They were Swiss cheese. Moving on to the goaltenders, the final position group I will be talking about in this video. The group was also mired by injuries, just like every other position group for the Blue Jackets this year. My MVP for this one, I guess, if we're involving traded players like Gavrikov, it will be Joonas Korpisalo, the only one that was consistently good on a consistent basis. My best surprise for this year, I guess, was Jet Greaves. It was cool to see him have a really good game against Toronto. And the biggest disappointment is going to be Elvis, because even though I feel for the guy and what he's gone through in his personal life these past couple years, his play on the ice has been pretty abysmal. The season started with an Elvis and Tarasov tandem. Tarasov has shown some promise in his NHL games, but he has still shown that he's still pretty inexperienced at the NHL level. He's still a very young and raw prospect, so we'll see how his career continues to project throughout the years of his career. Elvis was on the struggle bus since the beginning of the year. He was kind of it would be more notable to point out his good games and his bad games that took place this season. Korpisalo did come back from injury and played his best that he's ever played since 2019, which did lead to him getting traded for that package with Gavrikov for that first and that third round pick. Jonathan Quick was a Blue Jacket for about 36 hours in that trade with the Kings before being dealt to Vegas for Michael Hutchinson and like a 7th round pick in 8 years or whatever. The Blue Jackets also got goaltender John Gillies from the Coyotes in the Jake Voracek deal. He was probably just supposed to stay in Cleveland with Tarasov, but however, Elvis and Tarasov would get hurt again at the end of the season, so the Hutchinson and Gillies tandem for the goaltenders did finish off the year. Jet Greaves, I also mentioned, he got his first NHL game against his hometown Maple Leafs, and that was just a really cool moment. So in total, the Jackets played 6 goalies, and they rostered 7 if you include Jonathan Quick. So a lot of new faces, a lot of a rotating door with the goaltenders there. Manny Legace's contract also will not be renewed after this year. Whoever they get for their new goaltender coach, their number one mission is going to be to get Elvis going, because right now he is their number one goaltender. Maybe they go goaltender shopping in free agency, but I feel like if they do that, it'll probably be looking for more of a backup role, considering what Elvis' contract is, and acclimating Tarasov to a more consistent NHL game time might be something that the new coach is going to have to deal with as well. So overall, as far as the season goes in the positions for the Blue Jackets, I feel like this season has left a lot more questions than answers as far as what will the roster look like, where this season was probably supposed to provide some of those answers. We were probably supposed to see some more of those trends, but either due to injuries or bad play or weird deployment, we're still left with like a lot of this roster is tossed up in the air as what is actually going to be the impact of some of these prospect and young players as we move forward. But the Blue Jackets will have at least a new head coach. Who else will know what is new with his team in the future? Thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you so much for sticking with me if you have been keeping track during the Jacket season. I will see you at the next video.